What's up? Welcome back to Project Freelance. How's it going, guys? My name is Kay Anagonio. I am your host here on this podcast, and this week my guest is all the way in Vienna, Austria. I am talking to Matthias Hombauer, and I am super excited to dive into this topic today. So he is a concert photographer. He's been doing concert photography for about 10 years. He has a PhD in molecular biology, and he pivoted to start doing concert photography. And I think his story is super amazing, super incredible. He's a self-taught photographer, and he started an online video learning course about how to become a rockstar photographer. That's literally the website, howtobecomearockstarphotographer.com. Check it out. And he also has a podcast. He does all kinds of different things, and I really wanted to have him on this podcast. We've been trying to coordinate for months now, and he's got 2 kids, so it's hard to coordinate all that stuff. But now with this quarantine, we actually had some time to sit down and do this podcast, and so I'm super grateful to jump into this podcast. But before we do that, I have to let you know I have a book out called No Tracers, an Urban Explorer's Diary. It is full of photography from abandoned places all over the United States and a few places internationally. And if you guys are into crazy stories about exploration, definitely check that out. There's a link down in the description for you, as well as a bunch of affiliate links to things that may help you start with photography, like if you need a camera or a drone or a tripod or a backpack or a solar charger. There are affiliate links to Amazon down in the description. I get a little bit of kickback every time you guys use one of those links, so thank you in advance for supporting me. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys are killing it. You guys are helping me create amazing content, collaborations, and if you guys join the Patreon, you get early access to the podcast, you get early access to my covers, my original music, you get photo prints, you get all kinds of crazy stuff over there on the Patreon. So if you guys want to support me further, head to patreon.com/justtheletterK. And the last thing I want to let you guys know about is if you would like a signed photo print from me, a free signed photo print from me from an abandoned place, all you got to do is leave a rating or some feedback on this podcast. So if you guys leave a rating and feedback, send me a screenshot to Project Freelance on Instagram or Twitter, and I will send you a signed photo print from an abandoned place that I have explored. And without further ado, I would like to jump into this podcast. So, Matthias, please introduce yourself and what it is you do to the Project Freelance audience.
Yeah, hello. My name is Matthias Hombauer. I have a PhD in molecular biology, but I followed my passion instead and became a music photographer / online entrepreneur.
So that's a huge, juxtaposition between your talents, your skills, the things you went to school for. Let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about, molecular biology and how you got into that in the first place. What kind of sparked that in your youth?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I started to become really interested in how our body works because I thought, okay, I'm in this awesome body as a human being, but I don't have a clue how the biochemistry is working or all this stuff. So I wanted to know more about. And when I want to dive into a topic, then it needs to be really deep. I'm digging really deep. I want to know everything. So I thought maybe it's a cool idea to study molecular biology because molecular biology has all these topics in it, like genetics and immunology and biochemistry. So I started at the University of Vienna for about 5.5 years. Um, I did some internships in San Diego at the Salk Institute, a really prestigious institute. I went to Hamburg to another prestigious institute there. And then I started my diploma thesis at the Institute of Immunology in Vienna. And then I followed with my PhD thesis. And all in all, it took me about 9 years from start to finish to have my PhD degree in molecular biology in my hands. But this was just the beginning of the start of a incredible journey, because during my PhD thesis, I figured out that probably that's not really the job that I want to do the rest of my life. So in the beginning, I was really, you know, engaged and motivated, and I wanted to win the Nobel Prize and wanted to heal the world or whatever, or save the world from diseases. But it turned out that, long working hours in the lab, also on the weekends, there was some issues with money. If you're not in a country where they spend a lot of money for research, then you're kind of screwed. And here in Austria, it's like, okay, you need grants, you need to write papers to get money for your projects, and that was really not what I was expecting from the whole field and industry. And so for me, it was clear that I don't want to go the academic career. Um, the other option would be to go to a pharmaceutical company and go to the corporate world, which wasn't an option either for me. Never didn't want to do this. So I needed to figure out something else. And this is how it all started.
So, when did you first pick up a camera? When did that become a part of your life?
Yeah, this was really late. I was already 28 years old. As I said, 2 years in my PhD thesis out of the 4.5 years. And I picked up my first digital camera. I got one in Hong Kong on one of my trips because they were cheaper. I got a Canon 40D. And I started to take photos of flowers and landscapes and random portraits, like everyone else is starting, I guess. Um, and then the interesting thing that happened was, once when I was riding my bike to work, somehow I was in this kind of flow. I was riding with my fixie bike and thinking about what I should do in the future. And all of a sudden, I heard this voice in my head who said, "Why don't you become a concert photographer?" And the thing was really, like, for me, it was kind of esoteric because I didn't know what this or where this voice comes from, and I've never heard about concert photography. What was sure clear for me was, back then, when I was like a kid, 13 years old to 18 years old, I was playing in a death metal band. So music was always a big part in my life. I loved to go to concerts, and then I start taking photos. And so from now, if I look back, I think it was my unconsciousness who said, "Hey, why don't you combine those two passions, like music and photography?" And what happened next, when I arrived at work, I googled concert photography and I found Todd Young's webpage I should choose, and he was one of the few, the only one who was talking about concert photography back then, 10 years ago. And so I got curious about, and started in small clubs here in Vienna, shooting my first concerts, building up a portfolio, working with a small student blog to get access. And yeah, that's kind of the story how it all started. It always amazed me when I'm looking back and tell this story, because this was not planned at all, right? I never had an education in photography. I never took photography classes, but still, I got so curious that I decided to rather jump into the cold water and go the route of a self-employed creative photographer than have a rather sure academic job after finishing my PhD.
So, can you talk a little bit more about that student blog that you got access to shows through? I'm super
Mm,
curious about that because we've got a lot of listeners on here that are, in college right now, or, out of college, and they're trying to
right.
figure out how to get into shows. And that's a super interesting way to actually get access to shows that we haven't discussed here on the podcast. So, can you dive into that a little bit more and talk to me about that?
Sure. So, as I said, when I started out in small clubs where you could enter with a professional camera or a DSLR camera with with interchangeable lenses. So this was no problem at all. And I always suggest people who want to start out as a concert photographer, check out the clubs and the bars in your location where you can enter with the camera. So normally in smaller clubs, it's there is no issue, there is no problem to take a DSLR camera with you and take photos of bands. So this is the start. Most likely you have shitty lights, it's hard, but don't have any photo pit or whatever, but you need to start somewhere. And this is a tip that I also got from a lot of my podcast guests. Probably some of you know about my project, How to Become a Rockstar Photographer. I'm sure we're talking about this a little bit later. But I did a podcast and interviewed the 100 best concert photographers on this planet. And one of the common topics that arised was, how did you start out as a concert photographer? So this was a question I always ask, and most likely everyone said start out in small clubs where you can enter without any accreditation or photo pass, and start from here, build your portfolio. So this is what I did. I took some photos from smaller bands, built together a portfolio of 10 photos or 15 photos or so, and then I got into touch with a student blog. It was not only music; they always also had fashion and film and all this stuff. But it was a small blog, and the cool thing about it was that they were looking for photographers to cover kind of the concerts here in Vienna. And the even better part was that these guys were in touch with the biggest promoter here in Vienna. So in Vienna, it's, in Vienna there are probably 1 million people, and that's it. And there are a couple of clubs. It's really small scene, and there are just a handful of promoters, not like in the US probably. And so they had a good contact, and they were friends with one of the main promoters, so the guys from the promoters. And so it was really easy to get access um, to clubs or to concerts where you needed to have a photo accreditation. So how it worked was, I applied for, let's say, TV on the radio in this club with 2,000 people capacity, and they said, yeah, okay, you need a photo pass. So I asked these guys from the student blog, and they got to the promoter and said, hey, can we send a photographer there? We want to take photos. And they approved it. I got the photo pass from the magazine, and the exchange was, I get access to the photo pit. I can take photos for my portfolio, and I deliver the photos to the blog so they have content as well. So there was no money involved. It's like a give and take. It's a win-win situation for both. You get access, they get the photos. And this is what I would suggest to everyone. So if you're starting out, as I said, start in small clubs where you don't need accreditation. But if you want to get to the next step, where you want to get in clubs where you need a photo pass, search for online blogs, online magazines. They're probably not paying, but you get the access, and you get new photos from more famous bands, and you can build up your portfolio from there.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I started a similar way. I started at a small local venue where I could bring my camera in, same kind of thing. And I think that is a very universal thing. I think we all start from the ground up with the horrible lighting and the tiny clubs with no photo pit. And I think that's the best way to learn. Like, basically, if you can survive that, you can shoot in any kind of environment. So
That's the beauty of it. It's hard in the beginning, but once you're starting to shoot Metallica or Red Hot Chili Peppers, it's so easy then, because the lighting is so good, and then it's more like how to get the access. It's not about how to get awesome photos, because you always get awesome photos, I would say, most of the time. If you have a huge stage which is lit well, then it's more the challenge how to get access to those bands and
yeah,
shows.
absolutely. So for you, let's fast forward a little bit. When did it go from just being something that you love doing, as concert photography and working with this student blog, to the point where you started getting paid to take photos at concerts?
Mm. Um, I would say the big break came when I was working with Fatboy Slim directly. So Fatboy Slim was playing or headlining an electronic festival here, and I just thought maybe that would be cool to shoot him as well and take some photos. And what I figured out is, I like to be in the photo pit and shoot for the first 3 songs, no flash with this rule. But wouldn't it be cool to get in touch with those guys directly and work with them and being on stage and have all the access and building a relationship to all of my idols from the past? Because this was kind of uh, my vision, or the driving force was I wanted to work with the guys that I really loved, and with the music that I really, or the music that really inspired me in my life. So I just wrote them an email at the management address, and surprisingly, they wrote back and said, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's do a portrait session before the gig, and then you can shoot the whole concert, or the whole DJ session in this case."
Wow.
Um, yeah, this was huge. I mean, I was shaking. I was so nervous, and this was also my first portrait shooting of a famous act, and this was also the longest I've ever done. I mean, he gave me 30 minutes, and I was, oh my gosh, what should I do 30 minutes with this guy backstage? Because I just had my flash. I had an off-camera flash because I was watching Zach Arias' One Light workshop. So for everyone who wants to get into off-camera flash photography, Zach Arias and his workshop One Light, I think One Light workshop it's called, is really really the best one to start with. And so yeah, there I was back with Fatboy Slim and his assistant, 30 minutes in the backstage area with a room with white walls and a couch. And that's it. You cannot go outside because all the guys are out there and waiting for the concert. So it was, yeah, it was nerve wracking, but it turned out great. I got some great shots. And this is when everything started, where I thought, okay, I mean, I can do it, even though I'm a self taught photographer, even though I have no idea about the business side. Even though I'm, sitting in Vienna, why are those guys working with me? So I can do it. And so this was then my attitude or my mindset. And so from there, I started to get in touch with bands directly. I was touring then with the German band, with Chantel. It's a Balkan band. I was flying to Mexico with him for 2 days. I was touring the festival season in Europe with him. Then I started to work directly with the Prodigy and was one of the personal photographers. Also did some promo shots, and some of them were in the last album, The Days Man in Me. Then Instagram reached out to me, and they flew me into France, and I was doing the biggest uh, festival in France, a 5 days festival for Instagram directly, and we're shooting. Yeah, it's crazy. I
Whoa.
mean, I got an email from a girl from France in my spam folder, which says, "Yeah, we're Instagram, and they wanted to, or they're searching for photographer. If I'm up to it, they're flying me in for 5 days." And I, for sure. And so I needed to get back to her, and it turned out it's legit, and boom, there I was standing somewhere in La Rochelle on
What?
the
Oh.
west coast in France for 5 days. And it's just crazy because there were 100 photographers from France, and I was the only guy from abroad, and I got all the access. I was shooting portraits of all those bands backstage, and everyone was asking, "Who is this asshole? Why is he here? why is not us?" And yeah, and so it went on. And I mean, the peak, I would say, from my career was like a couple of months ago, when I was invited to fly to Saudi Arabia and shoot there 5 times. So I was flying in on Thursday and flying back on Saturday, and they were doing huge music festivals there. And the fascinating thing about is that Saudi Arabia, as probably people know, is not really the most open country, right? So they just opened it last year for visas, tourist visa. Normally you couldn't get into it, only for business. And it was also forbidden to play music outside. So they don't have cafes with music, because you cannot even go there, and you cannot go as a boy and a girl, or a man and a woman. So it's, everything is separated. If you went to um, to any event, you had different seats for men, and then there were the women somewhere else. And so for them, it's huge that they open it, and had these huge music festivals going on. And for them, it's the first time that they can celebrate together. And there were all these big names in rap, so Lil Wayne and DJ Snake, and then there was Marshmello and Adam Walker, and a lot of guys there. And this was just crazy for me, because you're flying there for 2 days, being in Vienna, next day you're in the middle of the desert shooting some weird bands, and then go back, and next day you're back in Vienna, and it was kind of a dream. And did this really happen to me? What's going on here? So this was quite, and this was for, by the way, for Live Nation Middle East, the biggest promoter worldwide. So this is kind of a short cut of what I did.
Yeah. So when you're in Saudi Arabia, do you realize that you're capturing history? Like you're literally like capturing history taking place, like the first huge festival in Saudi Arabia, and you're there and you're the guy. Like you're the
Exactly.
guy, dude. Like how did that feel? Like that's
Yeah,
incredible.
and the crazy thing, I was the only one, or the only official photographer shooting there. I mean, what would happen if I got ill or something or wasn't there? So it was crazy. And in the beginning, the first weekend, they didn't really had a plan, because they've never
Yeah, they had no idea.
they never arranged such huge masses. I mean, there were people like 25, 30,000 in the audience. And then all of a sudden we had all access to the stage for the whole current concert for Imagine Dragon. I mean, normally this is not happening, but there you are, standing on stage in Saudi Arabia and shooting the whole concert of Imagine Dragons. Yeah, things
Wow.
happen, and I think you just need to take the opportunity, and you have to be open, and you need to learn to leave your comfort zone, because I mean, that's just a, if you would have told me like a year ago that I will fly to Saudi Arabia and get paid for it to do what I love, I mean, I would just ask you if you're crazy. But once you get the opportunity, and there are opportunities out there all the day and all the time, you just need to grab it and do it. And sure, I mean, it's nerve-wracking flying to a country where you don't know what to expect. And as I said, Saudi Arabia, it's not really an open country. You cannot, I mean, probably you can just take photos on the street, but they don't want to have this. So you really have to take care what you're doing there. And yeah, but everything worked out great. So just, this was the craziest story I've ever, yeah, whatever happened to me.
Dude, that's amazing. It's absolutely incredible to hear about it. And thank you for sharing your story with us here on the podcast.
Sure.
So, what real jobs, quote unquote, real jobs, have you had to help you along your way as a freelance concert photographer?
Mm. Right. It's not a real job, I would say, in a sense of, normal job. What I did was, when I was starting with concert photography, I had the idea to start my own blog and my own homepage. It was not in fashion like 10 years ago, I guess. I mean, some people did it, but I thought maybe I can do a blog, even though I have no idea how to set up a homepage, but I will do it. And write down my experiences from a beginner concert photographer. So I started to write personal blog entries, some, basic camera settings that I'm using, some tips on low light photography. And then I figured out maybe it's cool to get a broader audience, and I started guest blog postings. So I wrote some articles for the biggest photography blog in the world. It's DPS, Digital Photography School. They have 1.6 million email subscribers. Um, that's huge. And the cool thing was, they didn't have any content about concert photography. So again, naive as I was, I just wrote them an email and said, hey, I can write an article about concert photography. Are you guys interested? And they got back and said, yeah, for sure. So this article is now shared 60,000 times or so until now for the last couple of years. So you see, it's really a big blog. And so what happened is, because of this, I guess, that a lot of people got aware of this blog. So normally, if you're writing a guest blog post, for everyone who is new to this business, you need to deliver unique content. So it's not that you have this article on your page and you just copy and paste it to them. So they want to have a unique article or unique content. And the reason is because Google is penalizing double content. So if Google sees it on two pages, one gets penalized, whatever. But the thing is, in the end of the article, you will have a box with your bio and a link. And it's important to have links from big pages, homepages, or blogs, or magazines, and whatever it is, backlinks to your site. And so I started this, and I was lucky enough to really build this brand. I called it How to Become a Rockstar Photographer. Um, and now, if you Google concert photography or concert photography settings, I'm always appearing in the first three of Google. And that's really cool. So this is really an organic driven online business. Back then, it wasn't a business, it was just a personal blog. But then I figured out, if so many people are interested in it, and everyone in the world has the same challenges to face, like how to get access, what's the best camera settings, uh, what's the three songs rule. So there are common topics. I figured out, why not writing an ebook? And so I started to write an ebook, and learned how to get email addresses, and then I sold my ebook on my homepage. A couple of hundred people bought it, and then I thought, okay, why not doing a video course out of it? And so I started to um, release or publish my video course, Shooting the Rock Stars. This is my premium online academy, and this became my business, which helped me to establish me as a concert photographer, even though I didn't have a regular income as a concert photographer. But this online business really worked because it's, as I said, organic. So people are Googling, they're finding me, and then if they're interested and they want to know more about it, probably get the book or get the course. And so I was able to establish a worldwide community of passionate concert photographers, with now an email list of about 5,000. Uh, the homepage was read by more than 200,000 people worldwide from more than 100 countries. So it's really cool to see that we are all passionate about music and photography, and everyone has the same issues. And I'm really grateful that I was able to build this community, and to provide help and get people moving if they're interested in living their dream as a concert photographer.
So your video course, I want to talk a little bit more about that, because that's something I'm also interested in doing, is a video course on a specific type of photography. And my thing, whenever I'm not shooting a concert or when I'm not freelancing as a videographer, I actually explore abandoned places. And so I want to start this whole series on like how to start exploring this kind of stuff, because people are looking for it, people are curious about it. And so I think it would be fun to do something like that. So when you made your video course, did you film it all yourself? Did you do all the editing? Did you create everything by yourself, or what was your process with that?
Yeah, it was a mess. It took me like 6 months to figure out how to do it, because it's easy to say, yeah, let's do a video course, but then you figure out, okay, probably I should be in front of the camera. So I had my Nikon camera, set it up. Then okay, I need some lighting, so I got some lights. Then I had this. Then I was thinking, okay, I will just record the sound. And then I figured out, okay, the sound just sounds not really great from the internal mic from the camera. So I got a shotgun mic, and then I had a Zoom, an audio recorder, external audio recorder, to get the sound quite right. And then I was standing in front of my camera, and I had pre-written all the text. And a friend of mine had a look at it. That everything works and everything is fine with the text. And then I was standing in front of the camera and couldn't even or barely talk 2 sentences from it, because I was so nervous. So the whole thing started, and I thought, okay, what should I do? And then I got on Kickstarter, and I got some teleporter, I think it's called. That's a thing. It's kind made of mirrors, and you can
Oh, a
screw it on your
teleprompter.
camera lens, and then you see a teleprompter. Yeah, teleprompter, and then you see the text coming up, and you're looking directly into the lens. It's a little bit small because it fits your camera, but it worked quite right. So what I did with this video course is, I would have loved to be, filmed externally by a team when I'm on a concert or in the photo pit or on stage, but it was too complicated, because, as you might know, and everyone else who is listening, um, it's shooting concerts is rather limited if you're not friends with the band. So normally you have this 3 songs no flash rule, where you're in the photo pit for 3 songs and then you have to leave. uh, that's for photos. If you're shooting video, it's different, because sometimes you can't record audio, sometimes you can just shoot the first 30 seconds or so. So it wouldn't have been, I was not able to get someone in there and film me externally. So what I did is, it's kind of a theoretical course. So I'm standing in front of the camera talking a little bit, and then I'm switching to my keynote presentation. And I have this keynote presentation, and then talking about how to do the business, or I talk about contracts and how to tour with bands and all this stuff. So it's more like this kind of course, but it works. I have now like 400 students in there, I guess, from the premium course. And there was not even one complaint about why it's not like a live course where I'm shooting bands. So I think it's really more about the information. So if someone has great information, or helps you starting this business, or whatever it is, it's more important than having the best filmed, highly produced masterclass like course. Because nowadays, if you have a look at all these webinars and all these courses like masterclass with the Hollywood celebs, I mean, that's you're frightened, because you think, why should I do a course? I mean, I cannot do it. It's so high performance, glossy magazine look. How can I do it? But it seems it's not really that important. I mean, sure, you need to have great audio quality, but it's more or less about the information you're providing. And if the information is good, then you can also be just in front of your webcam, or in front of your iPhone. That's all good. And definitely do a course. Yeah, and definitely do a course. It's a lot of fun to do it, and then it's also awesome to see that you can help people, and people are really getting to the next level because of your course. So I would highly suggest do it, even though it's a pain in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. I think the coming up with like exactly what to say, and I mean, a teleprompter is probably the best way to go about it, and instead of having to do like take after
Right.
take after take. So thank you for diving
Right,
into
and for
that a little
you,
bit.
sure, and for you probably it's easier, because you're a filmmaker, so you
Yeah.
know more than me. I had no clue about what I'm doing with video, and so until this day, I'm staying away a little bit from video because it's too complex. So therefore, I also decided to do the podcast, because it's only audio, and it's complex enough for me just to have audio files, but it's still not so complicated and complex than video.
So that's kind of interesting. Like, there are some concert photographers that choose to do video and photo, but I think it's cool that you've, stayed with photo and you're so dedicated to that. When you do gigs, do you ever work with other shooters? Do you ever work with a videographer? Do you work with other photographers? Or are you always shooting by yourself?
Yes. The reason why I was not into video is because until recently I was shooting a Nikon D700, and it has no video function. So this was good for me, because I never wanted to go into video. But what I have heard from tour photographers like Kat Pentsova, who is the tour photographer of Guns N' Roses, and all these other great guys who are touring with Billie Eilish and 30 Seconds to Mars and Shawn Mendes. So what artists want to have most likely are photos and videos. So I guess if you're a tour photographer right now, you should be able to deliver both. So on tour, I think it's a little bit easier, because you can probably focus one day on photo, one day on video, or something like this. So this works. But I was once asked to do photo and video, and I had 3 songs in the photo pit, and I said, there is no way to do it, because I will screw up both. Nothing will work. So either I concentrate on photos for 3 songs, or I do video, which I couldn't do anyhow. So I just did photos in the end. for the Saudi Arabia job, for example, I got hired by a video company. So there were 4 guys from Dubai who shoot exclusively video, and they also had a drone, which was really cool. And I was the only one who did stills. So that's a way that's working. I also know people who work in teams where there are dedicated videographers and still photographers. But normally, if you're on tour and with a smaller band, they might can't afford to have 2 guys on, and the reason is most likely they anyhow have no space in their little tour bus. So if you can join as a photographer of one person, then it's already enough. So I don't think that people, or that's likely to get 2 people on tour in a small tour bus just to have video and photos. So I guess the new way to do it, if you want to go be a tour photographer, try to deliver both stills and video.
Perfect. Awesome. So who are some of your favorite photographers or influences as far as photography goes?
Yeah, there are a lot, even though I'm trying not to be influenced
Sure, sure,
too
sure.
much from other photographers, because a surefire to failure is if you want to copy someone. And even though it's unconscious, you see all these great photos, and it happened to me as well. I mean, Javier Bragado, for example, it's a Madrid-based heavy metal photographer, and he's always doing this cool ultra wide shots of heavy metal bands, and it always looks awesome. Um, and I also tried it, but they never looked like Tim, and so I was frustrated. So I stopped doing, or tried to stop doing only ultra wide angle. And when I talked to him, because he's also a dear friend of mine, he said he has so many photos that look shitty, but he's just posting the great ones. So this is also something that people need to realize. The body of work that we are seeing on Instagram and social media platforms and the portfolios from photographers, this is really the best work. And from my experience, I'm doing this now for 10 years, and I have a portfolio of 15 of 20 shots, which look great and are awesome, and I'm really proud of them. But there are so many photos that I don't show. And most likely people see all those photos and think, wow, they're so great, and these are the best photographers, and how can I do it? But if you lift the curtain, you will see there are tens of thousands of shitty photos sitting on the hard drives that you will never see. So
Yeah.
no worries about this. And not every concert gives you the killer shots. So when I started out with photography, one of my uh, my idols, or one of my mentors, was Chavez. He's not, Chase Chavez?
Yeah,
Probably not.
I've heard the name, but
Yeah, right. He started with action photography. He's a little bit of music, but not really a lot. But he did a lot of action sports and portraits, and then he went on and founded Creative Life, this online platform. um, I think it's the biggest online live platform. It's called Creative Life, and you will find courses for photography, for graphic design, for business, everything. And he was kind of a mentor for me, and I was really, really grateful that he was also a guest on my podcast, because following someone for 10 years and then having him on the mic and talking to him for an hour, this was just awesome. Um, Especially because I think he said a coaching hour for him is like $10,000. So the podcast really worked. Yeah. So the podcast worked really fine for me. Um, that's also a reason why you should do a podcast if you don't have one, by the
yeah.
way. Now, yeah, and so I started, and then I mean, there are a lot of photographers, also from my podcast. I mean, there's Kat Benzover, the Guns N' Roses photographer. Then I interviewed people like Neil Preston. He was the first photographer of Led Zeppelin and The Who and Queen back in the 70s. Then there's Baron Wallman. He was the first Rolling Stone magazine photographer back in '69 and was doing iconic shots at Woodstock. And, there are a lot of guys. I have to say, everyone on my podcast, like the hundred guys there, everyone has um, their own style. And I love all those photos. So I would say pick a handful of guys that you're following, but don't fall into the trap that you want to copy them, because that's, as I said, that's a surefire to for failure, because you don't know what they are doing. Maybe they have a totally different concept, whatever it is. Maybe they have different access, but or probably they're just shooting in a different style. So never try to copy someone. Try to find your own style, which is really hard. I know Scott Kelby, for example, also one of the big photographers, told me the most important thing is finding your own style, and this you will get by shooting, shooting, shooting. And there is this saying that you need 10,000 hours to master a skill. So better you get out and take some photos.
So I know that we are currently locked up in quarantine because of this coronavirus
Right.
situation, but what are your future plans? Do you have any big projects coming up at the end of this year maybe, or next year, that you can talk about yet, or anything exciting on the horizon?
Yeah, so I'm excited about switching a little bit my projects. First of all, I mean, being a concert photographer right now is really hard, I guess. And I have this monthly, yeah, impossible. I have this mastermind group from my Shooting the Rockstar students who joined my course. There are a bunch of worldwide concert photographers, and we're meeting up every month, now every 2 weeks. And it doesn't matter if you talk to guys in New Zealand or in the US or in England or somewhere else. Everyone says, yeah, they have no job at all. Everything um, fell apart. In New Zealand, they told me that it's now sure that by the end of 2020, if you want to go to New Zealand, you have to self quarantine yourself for 2 weeks. So no band will be there playing, I guess. No one
Wow.
wants to stay in New Zealand for 2 weeks. The guys in the US, I don't know if you have heard it, but last time they told me that there might be plans to start concerts again by autumn of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is kind of, in a year and a half.
That's
So
crazy. Gee.
that's crazy. So what I would suggest is uh, that you rather search for, other
Mm-hmm.
opportunities as a photographer, because it doesn't matter if you're a concert photographer or a wedding photographer or a corporate photographer. We are all screwed, kind of. And so what people are doing or starting right now is to doing these webinars and online seminars, or doing Facebook lives and telling, what they're doing and teaching people. So this is anyhow what I'm doing all the time. So what I'm doing right now is to establish my brand as a person, like MatthiasHombauer.com. Um, so what I'm going to do is to teach people kind of the first of all how to build an online community, because this is, I think, really something important. And you have those guys who are preaching in your Facebook ads, just by Facebook ads, and then you can sell your courses and you can get your community. But the thing is, once you stop paying Facebook, you won't have any ads, which means, or which results in, there won't be any guys interested in you because no one knows about you. So what I've learned with this project, how to become a rockstar photographer, is how to build organic communities. And this is really something totally different, because then you will get people who are really passionate. You can connect with them, and it's like, you get your new friends as well, and it's like a family. So I will trying to teach this in a webinar or in courses. And I also want to show people how I was able to juggle all these different jobs and bring it to mastery. So how could I finish a PhD? How could I start a photography business from scratch and being successful? How could I start an online business without any idea what I'm doing? How could I do a podcast with 100 interviews? And I figured out there are some um, common pillars to all these projects, which goes back to your mindset, your daily habits, and stuff like this. So I will kind of go into this direction as well. And yeah, for concert photography, hopefully the Saudis calling back by the end of the year, but I'm not really sure if they can do a festival in December with the size like this. So I guess the best bet is to really have your eyes open. Now it's a good time to reflect on yourself. Where did you come so far in life? Is it really what you want to do? Is there anything you're passionate or dream of? And how can you start this side hustle, for example, to your normal day job if you have no home office, or to your creative job as a photographer? I guess everything will change somehow. Probably it's getting back to normal, but you never know. Probably you just have concerts on your live stream, and I'm always joking, probably we will sit in front of our computer and taking photos of our
Yep.
screens from live streamed concerts or so.
I've already seen some of the memes going around, concert photographers in 2020, and it's just photos of the laptop screen, and it's hilarious.
Right. This would be also fun. I mean, what a lot of guys are doing now is building their portfolio, or doing new portfolio reviews for themselves. That's all cool. I mean, just post all your photos on Instagram. But the thing is, everyone is doing it, and honestly saying, who is really interested in seeing the 10,000th concert photo on a day? Because everyone is posting right now and doing the portfolio review. So I think, yeah, think out of the box, try to get something else as an income stream. I was always a fan of having multiple income streams, because as we have seen now with the corona crisis, I mean, all of a sudden, uh, all your income can drop to zero from today to tomorrow. And so therefore it's, I guess, better to have at least a second leg of income, whatever it is, but definitely something that's probably attached to online, because what is clear is also, offline is nice, you can do workshops, but I know a lot of keynote speakers, they have no job at all now, and they don't know what to do, so they are starting to bring their content online in online courses or webinars. So I guess as a content creator, online is really the way to go in the future as well, even though it's already now, because you can reach people worldwide just with one click, and that's just amazing. That still blows my mind. I mean, if I would have done this like 20 years ago, I would have never had the chance to build a worldwide community. How could I? I mean, should I send greeting cards to someone who wants to join my followers? So so right now I think it's really the best time we have ever lived in. If you consider you want to go online, build a homepage, build an online business, build an education platform, whatever. And so therefore, I think it's a great idea what you said. If you see that there are guys out there who are interested in this topic of how to shoot abandoned places, and there is a need for it, then definitely go for it. And the energy that you get from this crowd and from this community then helps you to keep going, because it's also clear, if you start this journey, uh, it's like a roller coaster ride. It's not all easy. You have days where you think, why are you doing this? This is not going to work. There were days back then when I started out where I was, every month thinking how to pay the rent the next day, and all of a sudden, boom, next day there was an email with a job again. So it's kind of nerve-wracking. But it's working out. So if you believe in yourself, if you have the right mindset, and if you're there on the long run, there is this quote: "It's not a sprint, it's a marathon," and that's so true. There are no, I mean, overnight success is a bullshit. That's not what's happening. That's probably what the media will tell you or what you will read. But there is this cool story about Angry Birds, this app you might know of, the famous app Angry Birds. And I've read that this is from a Swedish software company, and this was their 50-second game. I mean, imagine how often they failed before. So you really have to be there in the long run. And I mean, I'm there for 10 years as a concert photographer, and don't expect to be, the next tour photographer of Metallica if you're shooting a couple of concerts. So, because normally I would say this is not how it's happening.
Yeah. And my last question for you is, what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
My favorite quote: "Just fucking do things." Um, when I started out, for me, in my mindset, it was everything needs to be perfect. You need the perfect homepage, you need the perfect equipment, you need the perfect whatever, camera settings, lighting. And I figured out, like everyone else is doing, I guess, who is starting this journey as a self-employed creative, is that you will fail big time because you're procrastinating big time. If you want to have the perfect homepage and it takes you 2 months and then takes you half year and 1 year later you still have no homepage on, because you think, okay, maybe this font is not so good, maybe I need this and that, that's not working. So I really love the mindset of the startup culture, where you say, okay, you have your your smallest viable product, you just go for it and try things out, even though the homepage is not the best, even your portfolio has not 10 kick-ass photos, it has just 2 photos and 8 okay photos, but you're just starting. And then you learn um, through the journey. There's also this quote that says, it's not about the end result, it's about the journey. And this is also something that I learned. Sure, it was cool to publish episode 100 of my podcast, but that's just, one moment in time. But the real journey was like the 100 interviews before, and the friends I made, and the stories I heard, and the things I learned. So it's all progress, little baby steps, step by step. And don't be perfect. Anyhow, no one wants to have a perfect guy, because then you're not authentic. I mean, have a look at all these Instagram celebrities. Yeah, they're looking all perfect, but is their world perfect? Probably not. And if you want to communicate with normal people, quote unquote, and want to build a community or want to inspire and motivate people, then you need to be authentic. And I guess authenticity is not the same as perfection. And so this would be something if I would have learned this, maybe I would have saved some years in this whole process of building my concert photography career and the online business career.
Awesome. Thank you. And if people want to find you to pick your brain some more, if they want to hire you for something in the future, where can they do that? Where can they find you? And yeah.
The best way is to go to howtobecomearockstarphotographer.com. That's a really long URL, I know, but it's working. People know what it's about. So howtobecomearockstarphotographer.com, or the short version is htbarp.com. Or you will find me on social with my name, Matthias Hombauer, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
And yeah, I'll definitely put all of your links down in the description for people so that they can find it easy. Thank you so much for coming on Project Freelance and sharing your story.
Thank you so much, Kai.
All right, so that was my podcast with Matthias Hombauer. Be sure to check out all of his links down in the description. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Project Freelance. Again, my name is Kay Anagonio. I am your host. Every single Monday at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have a new episode of Project Freelance come out. If you guys haven't checked out the previous episodes, there are over 100 episodes for you guys to dive into. So enjoy that content while you are in quarantine. Or if you're out of quarantine now when this podcast comes out and you're listening to it at a later date, thank you. Thank you for coming here. How did you find the podcast? I would like to hear from you. Please hit that subscribe button if you're new so that you guys get notified every time a new podcast comes out, which again is every Monday at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right, guys, I will talk to you next week on the podcast. Thank you for listening. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out and go create something.